Hello, this is the video for 6.5 notes, which is about the discriminant and the number of solutions in a quadratic. Oh, I need to make that thinner. Here we go. Okay, so we are still looking at quadratics, and quadratics in standard form are still in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. A, B, and C are numbers. To find out how many solutions a quadratic has, we are going to find what is called the discriminant. The discriminant can always be found using the formula b squared, I'm going to put that b in parentheses, minus 4ac. So that is b squared minus 4 times our a value times our c value. And I put that b in parentheses because if it's a negative number and we want to use our calculator, we need it to be in parentheses. The discriminant is part of a bigger formula that we will learn next lesson in 6.6, and that is called the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula lets us find the zeros of any quadratic or the solutions of any quadratic. Right now, this just tells us how many solutions we're going to have. So, our U-shaped quadratics are going to look like one of these three graphs. There is a chance that our graph will never cross the x-axis. So if you see this first graph here, it never crosses. It just doesn't even reach it. If that happens, we have no solutions and our discriminant is less than 0. So it's negative. There are times where our quadratic, our parabola, will touch in one spot only, right here. If that happens, we have one solution, the one spot where it touches, and that means our discriminant is going to be equal to 0. And then the last one, if we have two solutions, so we cross in two spots, so 1, 2 spots, that is going to happen when our discriminant is greater than 0. So if our discriminant is negative, we have no solutions. If our discriminant is positive, we have 2 solutions. And if our discriminant is 0, we have 1 solution. Okay, so today we are just plugging things into a formula. So we'll just do that b squared minus 4ac, and we will go from there. So first thing I have in all of our examples is lines for us to write down a, b, and c on. So this first example here on the left, my a value is negative 2, my b value is negative 1, and my c value is negative 1. Our formula that we are going to always use is that b squared minus 4ac. So we're just going to plug in those numbers. So b squared in this case would be negative 1 squared minus 4 times my a value, which is negative 2, times my c value, which is negative 1. Okay, at this point, just like all last unit and all this unit, we need to show our work for what we're plugging into our formula, and then we can either do the work in our head, we can do the work in our calculator, or we can work it out piece by piece. So if I was to work this out piece by piece, negative 1 squared would be positive 1. And then negative 4 times negative 2 would be positive 8, times negative 1 would be negative 8. So it would end up with 1 minus 8, which is negative 7. If I wanted to do this in my calculator, I would need to find my calculator. I would split view. I would do negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 2 times negative 1, and I would get negative 7. So I can also just throw it in my calculator, but I do need to write down what I'm putting into my calculator. Okay, from here, the number of solutions I have, since this is negative, I have 0 solutions. So if the solution you get for your discriminant is less than 0, you have no solutions. 0 solutions. Okay, next problem. We've got 3x squared minus 6x plus 3. So my a value is 3, my b value is negative 6, and my c value is 3. So once again, I'm using that same formula, b squared minus 4ac. So that's going to be negative 6 squared minus 4 times my a value, which is 3, times my c value, which is also 3. Negative 6 squared is positive 36, because I do negative 6 times negative 6. And then negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, times 3 again is negative 36. So I end up with 36 minus 36, which is 0. If I wanted to do that in my calculator, I could. I would do negative 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times 3. I would get 0. If my discriminant is equal to 0, that means I have one solution. Okay, so we've seen a problem where we're negative and we have no solutions. We've seen a problem where we are equal to 0, so we have one solution. Guess what? We're going to have one where we get a positive discriminant and we have two solutions. Spoiler alert. Okay, so last problem. A is 2, B is negative 1. We've got an imaginary negative 1 there. And C is negative 3. So b squared minus 4ac. We are going to be doing negative 1 squared minus 4 times my a value is 2 times my c value is negative 3. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. So I end up with 1 plus 24, which is 25. Since my discriminant is positive, I have two solutions. If I wanted to do that in a calculator, I would do negative 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. I get 25. Awesome. Okay, let's close out of this. When you guys are doing your assignment, you need to show yourself writing down what A, B, and C is. Fill in those blanks. You need to show this step of work. You plugging everything into your formula. And then you need to show your answer, obviously, and your number of solutions. You do not need to write b squared minus 4ac down every time. And then if you're doing your work in your head or your calculator, you don't need to write that down like I wrote down the 1 minus 8. You don't need to write that down. Obviously, you can if you want to. That is all.